Hi, I'm Madison. I'm a graphic designer who runs my own freelance business from my little studio apartment in Portland. I design logos, websites, marketing materials. You know, the kind of work that helps small businesses tell their stories. But at my brother's 30th birthday party last Saturday, he made it crystal clear that my work didn't matter at all. In fact, he literally kicked me out of his own birthday celebration because I don't make six figures. What happened next? Well, let's just say Derek forgot about one very important detail when he decided to humiliate me in front of everyone. Have you ever been judged by your own family just because your bank account doesn't have enough zeros? Because that's exactly what happened to me, and I'm still processing the shock of it all. It started innocently enough. Derek had been planning this birthday bash for months, talking about how it was going to be the party of the year. He'd just gotten promoted to senior associate at his law firm, bought himself a brand new BMW, and moved into this gorgeous downtown loft with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Everything about Derek's life screamed success, and he wanted everyone to know it. I spent weeks working on his birthday gift, a custom illustration of our childhood home, the place where we grew up, complete with the old oak tree we used to climb and the tire swing our dad hung for us. I painted it by hand, every detail perfect, every memory captured in watercolor. It took me 40 hours to complete, but I knew Derek would love it. At least, I thought he would. When I arrived at his loft that evening, the place was already packed with his colleagues from the firm, his law school buddies, and what looked like every successful professional under 35 in the city. Everyone was dressed to impress: designer suits, expensive dresses, jewelry that probably cost more than my rent. I felt a little underdressed in my vintage blazer and thrift store dress, but I figured it was about celebrating Derek, not about competing in some fashion show. The first red flag should have been how Derek introduced people. Instead of normal introductions like, "This is Sarah, she's a doctor," or "Meet Mike, he works in finance," Derek was literally announcing people by their salaries. I heard him tell someone, "This is Jennifer, she just hit 200K at her consulting firm," and "You've got to meet Tom, he's pulling in 350 as a surgeon." It was weird, but I chalked it up to Derek being excited about his own success and wanting to surround himself with other high achievers. I found him by the kitchen island, holding court with a group of his law firm friends, all of them laughing at some story about billable hours. When he saw me, his face lit up, or so I thought. "Madison!" he called out, loud enough for half the party to hear. "Come here, I want you to meet everyone." I walked over with my carefully wrapped gift, smiling, ready to celebrate my big brother's milestone birthday. But something in his expression shifted as I got closer, like he was sizing me up, evaluating whether I belonged in his shiny new world. "Everyone, this is my little sister Madison," he announced, his arm around my shoulder in what felt less like affection and more like control. "She's an artist." The way he said artist made it sound like a hobby, not a profession. But I pushed down the irritation and focused on being supportive. "Actually, I run my own graphic design business," I corrected gently, extending my hand to his colleagues. "I specialize in brand identity and web design for small businesses." One of Derek's friends, a guy in an expensive suit who looked like he'd never worked a day outside of an office, raised his eyebrows. "Oh, that's cute. Like making logos and stuff?" Before I could explain that yes, strategic brand development is actually incredibly complex and valuable work, Derek jumped in with a question that made my stomach drop. "So, Madison, what's your salary situation looking like these days?" he asked, his voice carrying across the conversation. "I mean, we're all curious how the freelance thing is working out for you." The entire group went quiet. Everyone was staring at me, waiting for my answer, and I could feel the judgment already forming in their eyes. This wasn't a brotherly check-in about my career. This was an interrogation. "Well, freelancing means my income varies month to month," I said carefully, trying to maintain my dignity. "Some months are better than others, but I'm building something sustainable. I love what I do, and my clients value the work I provide." "But like, ballpark," Derek pressed, his smile getting sharper. "Are we talking 5 figures? Low 5 figures." I felt my cheeks burning. "Derek, I don't think this is really the place to—" Come on, we're all professionals here, he interrupted, gesturing to his friends. I mean, Jessica just told us she's making 180 at her firm, and David's pulling in 225. We're just sharing success stories. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about sharing. This was about ranking. Derek wanted to place me somewhere on his little hierarchy of human worth, and he already knew I wasn't going to measure up to his standards. I'm doing fine, Derek, I said firmly. My business is growing every year, and I'm building a client base that— So not 6 figures, he said, cutting me off with a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. Still playing with crayons while the rest of us adults make real money. The words hit me like a physical blow. Playing with crayons. Like everything I'd worked for, everything I'd built, every late night spent perfecting a client's vision was just child's play. The group around us shifted uncomfortably, but nobody spoke up. Nobody told Derek he was being cruel. They just watched. You know what, Derek? I said, my voice shaking with a mixture of hurt and anger. I brought you a gift, but maybe this isn't the right time. I started to turn away, ready to find a quiet corner to collect myself. But Derek's voice stopped me cold. Actually, Madison, I think it might be better if you headed out early tonight. I turned back to stare at him, certain I'd misheard. What? This is kind of a networking thing, he said, not quite meeting my eyes. You know, successful professionals only. People who've made it in their careers. I don't think you'd really fit in with this crowd. The room around us had gone completely silent. Even the music seemed quieter. Everyone was staring now, watching this train wreck unfold in real time. You're kicking me out? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Of your birthday party? I'm just saying maybe you'd be more comfortable somewhere else, Derek said, his tone getting firmer. Somewhere more? Your speed. This is a 6-figure earners-only kind of gathering, and, well, he shrugged, like my failure to meet his income requirements was just an unfortunate fact of life. I looked around the room at all these strangers, these successful professionals who were witnessing my brother publicly humiliate me for not making enough money. Some looked uncomfortable. Others seemed almost entertained by the drama. But not one person spoke up to defend me. Fine, I said, setting his wrapped gift on the counter with more force than necessary. Happy birthday, Derek. I hope your 6-figure friends give you everything I never could. I walked toward the door on shaking legs, my face burning with embarrassment and my heart pounding with rage. As I reached for the door handle, Derek called out one last devastating blow. Hey, Madison, come back when you're making real money like the rest of us, okay? Maybe then you'll understand what success actually looks like. The door slammed behind me with a finality that seemed to echo through my entire body. I stood in the hallway for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. My own brother, the person who was supposed to love and support me no matter what, had just thrown me out of his birthday party like I was some kind of embarrassment to be hidden away. I drove home in a daze, Derek's words echoing in my head. Playing with crayons. Not real money. 6-figure earners only. By the time I reached my apartment, the hurt had crystallized into something harder, sharper. This wasn't just about money. This was about respect, about value, about Derek deciding that I wasn't good enough to exist in his successful world. I called my parents the next morning, thinking surely they'd be outraged by Derek's behavior. Surely they'd understand how cruel and inappropriate he'd been. Oh, honey, Mom said when I told her what happened. You know Derek didn't mean anything by it. He's just excited about his success right now. He kicked me out of his birthday party, Mom, in front of all his friends. Well, maybe he felt like you might not have much in common with his work colleagues, she said gently. You know how different your worlds are. Derek's worked so hard to get where he is. The implication was clear. Derek deserved his success, and I deserved my failure to measure up. Dad was even worse. Madison, sweetie, you have to understand Derek's perspective. He's finally made it. He's earned his place among successful people. Maybe he was just trying to protect you from feeling out of place. Protect me? I repeated incredulously. By humiliating me? You're being a little dramatic, don't you think? Dad said. Derek's a good kid. He loves you. He was probably just having fun. You know how brothers can be. Just having fun. Like destroying my dignity in front of a room full of strangers was some kind of harmless sibling teasing. Even my cousin Jenny, who I thought would understand, basically told me to get over it. "Look, Derek can be a jerk sometimes, but he's family," she said when I called her crying. "Maybe instead of being mad, you should use this as motivation to work harder on your business. Prove him wrong." Prove him wrong. Like the burden was on me to justify my existence instead of on him to apologize for being a terrible human being. The more people dismissed Derek's behavior, the angrier I became. Everyone wanted to explain it away, to make excuses for him, to paint me as the oversensitive little sister who couldn't handle the truth about her lack of success. But here's what none of them knew, what Derek conveniently forgot to mention when he was bragging about being self-made and surrounding himself with other high earners. Derek didn't build his success alone, not even close. When Derek was in law school, drowning in student loans and struggling to pay rent, who do you think co-signed his private loans when his credit wasn't good enough? When he needed money for bar exam prep courses and interview suits, who helped him out? When he was a broke first-year associate eating ramen every night because his starting salary barely covered his loan payments, who quietly transferred money into his account so he could afford groceries? That's right, the sister who plays with crayons and doesn't make real money. I had been supporting Derek's climb to success for years, making sacrifices he never acknowledged, using money from my freelance work, and even dipping into the inheritance our grandparents left me to help him build the career he was now so proud of. Money he promised to pay back, but somehow never got around to discussing once his salary started climbing. Derek loved to tell people about his self-made success story, about how he worked his way through law school and built his career through pure determination and talent. What he didn't mention was that his determination was funded by his little sister's bank account, and his talent was supported by someone who believed in him even when he didn't believe in himself. But that night, staring at the ceiling of my studio apartment, listening to the upstairs neighbors argue and the street noise filter through my thin windows, I realized something that changed everything. Derek might have forgotten who helped him get to where he is, but the bank sure hadn't. Because Derek wasn't just ungrateful, he was still completely dependent on me in ways he'd managed to hide from everyone, including himself. Those law school loans he'd been so worried about, the ones that would have destroyed his credit and his future if he'd defaulted, I wasn't just the co-signer who'd helped him qualify. For the past 5 years, I'd been the one actually making the payments. Every month, like clockwork, $537 came out of my checking account to cover Derek's educational debt, while he used his fancy law firm salary to buy BMWs and downtown lofts. Derek had no idea that his 6-figure lifestyle was being subsidized by his unsuccessful sister's sacrifice. He thought the loans were just automatically paid, some kind of magical financial arrangement that didn't require any thought or gratitude on his part. But here's the thing about co-signed loans. The person whose name is on the paperwork has certain rights, including the right to stop making payments anytime they want. As I lay there in the dark, Derek's cruel words still echoing in my ears, I started to smile for the first time since leaving his party. Come back when you're making real money like the rest of us? Oh, Derek, you have no idea what real money actually looks like. But you're about to find out exactly how much my playing with crayons has been worth to your precious success story. Because if I'm not successful enough to attend your birthday party, then I'm certainly not successful enough to keep funding your lifestyle. And when those loan payments suddenly become your responsibility alone, we'll see just how self-made you really are. The best part? Derek had handed me the perfect justification for what I was about to do. After all, this was a 6-figure earners-only situation, right? Well, Derek was about to learn whether he could maintain his 6-figure lifestyle when his 5-figure loan payments became his own problem to solve. Sweet dreams, big brother. Tomorrow's going to be a very interesting day. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Derek's words from the night before, "Come back when you're making real money like the rest of us," kept echoing in my head, but instead of hurt, they now filled me with determined purpose. If Derek wanted to play games about who was successful and who wasn't, Then it was time to lay all the cards on the table. I made myself coffee and sat down at my desk with my laptop, ready to do something I should have done years ago: document exactly how much Derek's self-made success had actually cost me. What I found when I started digging through my financial records was even worse than I remembered. The initial co-signing for his law school loans was just the beginning. Over the past 5 years, I had transferred a total of $43,000 to help Derek build his career. $43,000 that came from my freelance earnings, my savings, and yes, a significant chunk of the inheritance our grandparents had left both of us. I opened my banking app and scrolled through years of automatic payments. Derek's law school loans, $537 per month for 60 months straight. That was over $32,000 right there. But then there were the emergency transfers I'd forgotten about. The $2,800 when his car broke down during his second year of law school, the $1,500 for his bar exam fees, the $3,200 when he needed a security deposit for his first apartment after graduation, the $5,000 I'd lent him for interview suits and networking events when he was job hunting. Every single transfer had come with promises to pay me back once things stabilized, or after my next bonus, or when I get my student loans under control. Promises that Derek had apparently forgotten the moment his paychecks started having enough commas in them. I screenshot every transaction, every transfer, every payment. I downloaded bank statements going back 6 years. I found the original loan documents where my signature sat right next to Derek's, making me equally responsible for his debt. I found emails where he'd begged me to help him, where he'd promised this would just be temporary, where he'd sworn he'd never forget how much I'd sacrificed for his future. But the most damning evidence was sitting right there in my current bank account. That automatic payment of $537 that had been going out every single month like clockwork. Derek thought his loans were just magically being paid. He had no idea that while he was buying luxury cars and throwing six-figure earners-only parties, his little sister was still covering his educational debt. Then I found something that made my blood boil. Derek's LinkedIn profile, updated just last week. Self-made attorney building success through hard work and determination. Grateful for the opportunities I've created through my own efforts. My own efforts. Right. I kept digging, and that's when I discovered Derek's real financial situation wasn't quite as solid as he pretended. His credit report, which I could access because I was a co-signer on his loans, showed some interesting patterns. That BMW he was so proud of, financed at a high interest rate because his debt-to-income ratio was already stretched thin. The downtown loft? He was barely making the mortgage payments, and he'd had to put down a smaller down payment than he'd wanted. Derek wasn't just ungrateful, he was financially overextended. His entire lifestyle was built on the assumption that someone else would keep handling his student loan payments while he used his salary for more impressive purchases. Without my monthly $537 contribution, his carefully constructed image of success would crumble fast. But I needed more than just financial records. I needed witnesses, people who could confirm the real story of Derek's rise to success. So I started making phone calls. My first call was to Marcus, Derek's roommate from law school. I hadn't talked to Marcus in years, but I remembered him being a decent guy who'd witnessed some of Derek's financial struggles firsthand. "Madison, wow, it's been forever," Marcus said when he picked up. "How are you? How's Derek doing? I saw on social media he got promoted again." "That's actually what I'm calling about," I said carefully. "I'm trying to put together some memories of Derek's law school days, and I was wondering if you remembered anything about his financial situation back then." Marcus laughed. "Oh man, do I remember. Derek was always stressing about money. He was constantly getting calls from loan servicers, and I remember him being on the phone with you all the time asking for help. You were like his financial lifeline. I always thought it was cool how supportive you were. Do you remember any specific instances?" "Are you kidding? You basically saved his entire law school career. Remember when he almost had to drop out second year because he couldn't make his loan payments? You swooped in and handled it. And when he was studying for the bar, he was freaking out because he couldn't afford the prep course, and you covered it. I always wondered if he ever paid you back for all that." The answer to that question was becoming increasingly clear. My next call was to Sarah Chen, the loan officer at Derek's bank. I'd worked with her when co-signing the original loans, and we'd developed a professional relationship over the years of payment processing. "Madison, good to hear from you," Sarah said. "Is this about Derek's account? I have to tell you, it's unusual to see such a consistent payment history from a co-signer while the primary borrower seems to be completely hands-off with the loan management." "What do you mean by hands-off?" "Well, in my experience, when someone is actively paying their own student loans, they check in periodically, they ask about payment schedules, they monitor their balance. Derek hasn't contacted us about these loans in over 3 years. Honestly, I wasn't even sure he knew the payments were still being made." That confirmed what I'd suspected. Derek had completely disconnected from the reality of his debt because I'd been handling it for so long. "Sarah, if I were to stop making payments, what would happen?" "Well, as the cosigner, you have every right to discontinue payments at any time. The responsibility would immediately fall back to Derek as the primary borrower. Given the current balance and terms, he'd be looking at monthly payments of, let me check, approximately $3,200 per month. $3,200. More than 6 times what I'd been paying, because the payments I'd been making were only covering the minimum while interest continued to accrue on the remaining balance. And if he missed payments? After 30 days, it would impact his credit score. After 90 days, the loan would be considered in default, and we'd begin collection proceedings. Given his current debt-to-income ratio based on what I can see in his file, an additional $3,200 monthly obligation would put him in a very difficult position financially. Perfect. My third call was to Derek's ex-girlfriend, Emma, who dated him during his first year as an associate. Emma had always been kind to me, and I remembered her mentioning once that she'd found Derek's attitude about money concerning. "Madison! Oh my God, how are you? I heard about Derek's promotion. Good for him, I guess." The way she said "I guess" told me everything I needed to know about how that relationship had ended. "Emma, can I ask you something? When you were dating Derek, did he ever mention his student loans or how he was managing them?" Emma was quiet for a moment. "That's actually part of why we broke up. Derek was always talking about being self-made and financially independent, but there were things that didn't add up. Like, he'd complain about being broke, but then he'd buy expensive things. And one time I was at his place when he got a call from someone asking about loan payments, and he just said, 'My sister handles all that financial stuff,' and hung up. When I asked him about it, he got really defensive and said I didn't understand how successful families operated." "Did he ever mention paying me back?" "Madison, he talked about you like you were his personal bank account. Not in a grateful way, either. More like it was just expected that you'd handle his problems so he could focus on more important things. It really bothered me." By the time I finished making calls, I had a clear picture of who Derek really was. Not the self-made success story he presented to the world, but someone who'd built his entire career on the foundation of my sacrifice while convincing himself, and everyone else, that he'd done it all alone. But I still needed one more piece of evidence, something that would prove beyond any doubt that Derek was intentionally misleading people about his self-made status. So I did something I'd never done before. I started monitoring Derek's social media and public statements. What I found was infuriating. Derek had given an interview to his law school's alumni magazine just 2 months earlier, talking about his success story. The article was titled, "From Student Loans to Success: How Derek Martinez Built His Career Through Determination." In the interview, Derek was quoted saying, "I knew I had to make sacrifices to build the career I wanted. I took on significant debt to fund my education, but I was determined to handle it responsibly and pay it back through my own hard work. Too many people look for handouts or expect family to bail them out, but I believe in earning your success through your own efforts." Your own efforts. While I'd been making his loan payments for 5 years straight. The article continued. Martinez advises young professionals to take ownership of your financial responsibilities and don't burden your family with your choices. The satisfaction of paying off your debts with money you earned yourself is worth more than any shortcut. I had to read that paragraph 3 times before I could fully process the audacity. Derek was literally giving advice about financial independence while being financially dependent on me, and he was doing it in his law school's alumni magazine where future students would read it and think he was some kind of role model. That's when I knew exactly what I had to do. I spent the next week preparing for what I privately started calling Derek's Education Day. I gathered every piece of evidence, organized it into a clear timeline, and made copies of everything: bank statements, loan documents, screenshots of transfers, emails with promises to pay me back, text messages asking for financial help, and most importantly, that alumni magazine interview where Derek positioned himself as someone who'd never asked family for financial support. I also did something else. I researched Derek's law firm and discovered they were having their annual celebration dinner that Friday night, an event where Derek would be formally recognized for his promotion and where he'd be giving a speech about his journey to success. The perfect venue for some truth-telling. But first, I had a phone call to make. Derek Martinez's office, his assistant answered. Hi, this is Madison Martinez, Derek's sister. I need to speak with him about a family financial matter. Derek picked up a few minutes later, his voice immediately suspicious. Madison? What's wrong? Did something happen to Mom and Dad? No, Derek. Everyone's fine. I'm calling about your student loans. There was a long pause. What about them? Well, I wanted to let you know that I'll be discontinuing the monthly payments effective immediately. Another pause, longer this time. What monthly payments? And there it was. Derek genuinely had no idea that I'd been covering his loans for 5 years. In his mind, they were just magically being handled by some financial institution, requiring no thought or gratitude on his part. Derek, I've been making your student loan payments since you graduated. $537 every month for the past 5 years. The loans you co-signed for, the ones that were in both our names, I've been covering them while you built your 6-figure lifestyle. That's not possible. Those loans are being paid automatically from my account. No, Derek, they're not. Check your bank statements. Check with your loan servicer. I've been handling this debt while you forgot it existed. I could hear him frantically typing in the background, probably logging into his bank account for the first time in months. But why would you stop now? I mean, if you've been handling it, why change anything? The entitlement in his voice was breathtaking, even after being confronted with the reality that I'd been subsidizing his lifestyle for years. His first concern wasn't to thank me or apologize, but to ask why I'd want to stop. Well, Derek, you made it pretty clear at your birthday party that I don't make enough money to be part of your world. I figured someone who's not successful enough to attend your parties probably isn't successful enough to pay your bills either. Madison, come on. I was having fun. You know I didn't mean anything serious by that. Really? Because it felt pretty serious when you kicked me out in front of all your colleagues. Look, I'm sorry if your feelings got hurt, but you're being really dramatic about this. Can't we just keep things the way they are? I mean, it's working fine for everyone. Working fine for everyone. Like my financial sacrifice was just a minor inconvenience rather than a significant monthly drain on my resources. Actually, Derek, it's not working fine for me anymore. Starting next month, you'll be responsible for your own loan payments. According to the bank, that'll be about $3,200 per month. The silence that followed was so long I thought the call had dropped. 3,000. Madison, I can't afford that. My mortgage, my car payment, my other expenses. There's no way I can handle an extra $3,000 every month. Well, I guess you'll have to figure it out. Maybe sell the BMW? Downsize the loft? I hear there are some great apartments in less expensive neighborhoods. Of course, those might not be suitable for 6-figure earners-only gatherings. This is insane. You can't just dump this on me out of nowhere. Out of nowhere? Derek, these have always been your loans. I've just been helping you with them for the past 5 years without any acknowledgement or gratitude. Consider this me stepping back so you can experience the full satisfaction of earning your success through your own efforts, as you put it in that alumni magazine interview. Another long pause. You read that? I did. It was very inspiring. All that advice about taking ownership of your financial responsibilities and not burdening family with your choices. I figured you'd want the chance to actually live by those principles. Madison, please, can we talk about this? Can we work something out? Oh, we'll definitely be talking about it. In fact, I'll see you Friday night at your firm's celebration dinner. I have some things I'd like to share with everyone about your journey to success. "You're not invited to that dinner. It's for the firm only." Actually, I called and spoke to the event coordinator. When I explained that I was Derek Martinez's sister and had some important insights about his success story to share during his recognition speech, they were thrilled to add me to the guest list. Apparently, family success stories are very inspiring to the other associates. I could practically hear Derek's panic through the phone. "Madison, don't do anything crazy. We can work this out between us." "Don't worry, Derek. I'm not going to do anything crazy. I'm just going to tell the truth. After all, the truth about how you built your success should be something you're proud to share, right?" "Madison, please." "I have to go, Derek. I have some documents to prepare for Friday night." "Oh, and you might want to call your loan servicer today. They'll need to set up a new payment plan now that you'll be handling things yourself. Have a great rest of your week." I hung up before he could respond, my heart pounding with adrenaline and something that felt a lot like justice. Over the next few days, Derek called me 17 times. I let every single call go to voicemail. His messages started apologetic, then became increasingly desperate, and finally turned angry and demanding. But I didn't respond to any of them. Derek had spent years ignoring my contributions to his success. Now it was his turn to experience what it felt like to be ignored. Friday night arrived, and I dressed carefully for the occasion. Not too formal. I didn't want to look like I was trying too hard to fit into Derek's world, but professional enough to be taken seriously by his colleagues. I wore my favorite black dress with a blazer, and I carried a leather portfolio containing everything I needed. The event was being held at an upscale restaurant downtown, the kind of place where Derek loved to network and see and be seen. When I arrived, I could see Derek across the room, surrounded by his colleagues, but he looked tense and distracted. He spotted me immediately and started walking over, but I smoothly moved to the opposite side of the room and struck up a conversation with someone I didn't know. "Hi, I'm Madison Martinez," I said to a woman in her 40s who looked like she might be one of the partners. "Derek's sister?" "Oh, wonderful," she said warmly. "I'm Patricia Williams, one of the senior partners. Derek has mentioned you before. You're the artist, right?" "Graphic designer, actually. I run my own business." "That's fantastic. Derek always talks about how proud he is of your creativity. He's such a family-oriented person. Are you here to celebrate his promotion?" "Absolutely. I wouldn't miss the chance to share some insights about Derek's journey to success." Patricia's eyes lit up. "Oh, how wonderful. Would you be interested in saying a few words during the recognition portion of the evening? I'm sure Derek would be thrilled, and the other associates would love to hear about his background." "I would be honored," I said, keeping my expression warm and sincere. Across the room, Derek was clearly trying to work up the courage to come over and confront me, but every time he started in my direction, I managed to move to a different conversation. I introduced myself to more partners, associates, and staff members, each time mentioning that I was looking forward to sharing some stories about Derek's path to success. When dinner was served, I was seated at a table with several of Derek's colleagues, all of whom were eager to hear family stories about their newly promoted peer. Derek was at the head table with the partners, shooting nervous glances in my direction throughout the meal. "So what was Derek like growing up?" asked one of the associates, a young woman who couldn't have been more than 2 years out of law school herself. "Derek was always ambitious," I said truthfully. "Even as a kid, he knew he wanted to be successful, and he was willing to do whatever it took to achieve his goals." "That's so inspiring," another associate chimed in. "He's always talking about the importance of self-reliance and building your own success." "Yes," I said, taking a sip of my wine. "Derek has very strong opinions about self-made success. Very strong." Finally, the recognition portion of the evening began. The managing partner stood up and gave a lovely speech about Derek's accomplishments, his dedication, and his bright future with the firm. Then Derek himself was called to the podium to say a few words. Derek's speech was exactly what I'd expected. He talked about hard work, dedication, and the satisfaction of earning success through his own efforts. He mentioned overcoming financial challenges during law school and taking responsibility for his own future. He thanked the firm for giving him opportunities to prove himself. He did not mention me once. When Derek finished speaking, Patricia Williams stood up. "Before we wrap up, we have a special treat. Derek's sister Madison is here tonight, and she'd like to share some thoughts about Derek's journey to success. Madison? Derek's face went completely white as I stood up and walked to the podium. The room was full of expectant faces, all waiting to hear heartwarming stories about Derek's character and determination. I opened my portfolio and smiled at the crowd. "Thank you so much for inviting me to celebrate Derek's promotion," I began. "I'm incredibly proud of my brother's success, and I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to share some insights about how he built his career." Derek was gripping his water glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. Derek mentioned overcoming financial challenges during law school, and I think it's important for everyone to understand what that really looked like, I continued. Duh, Derek's education cost approximately $200,000, which is a significant investment in anyone's future. The room nodded along. So far, this sounded like a normal family success story. What Derek didn't mention is that he couldn't qualify for those loans on his own. His credit wasn't established enough for the private loans he needed to complete his education. So I co-signed for him, putting my own financial reputation on the line to help him achieve his dreams. A few people glanced at Derek, who was now staring at the table in front of him. But co-signing was just the beginning of my investment in Derek's success. You see, while Derek was focused on his studies and then building his career, someone needed to make sure those loan payments were made every month. For the past 5 years, I've been making Derek's student loan payments, $537 every month, totaling over $32,000. The room was getting quieter, sensing that this wasn't the heartwarming family story they'd expected. But that wasn't all. During law school, when Derek needed money for bar exam prep, I provided it. When he needed funds for interview suits and networking events, I covered those costs too. When he needed help with rent and living expenses during his first year as an associate, I transferred money to help him get established. I pulled out a sheet of paper from my portfolio. In total, over the past 6 years, I've contributed approximately $43,000 to Derek's career development, money that came from my own small business earnings and my personal savings. Derek was now looking directly at me, his face a mixture of panic and anger. Now, I want to be clear. I was happy to make these contributions because I believed in Derek's potential and I wanted to support his success. Families should support each other's dreams, and I was proud to be part of Derek's journey. The room relaxed slightly, thinking this was heading toward a happy ending. However, something interesting happened last week at Derek's birthday party that made me reconsider our financial arrangement. Derek closed his eyes. Derek threw a wonderful celebration to mark his 30th birthday and his promotion. But when I arrived, Derek made it clear that I wasn't welcome among his guests. You see, Derek had decided this was a 6-figure earners-only gathering, and since my graphic design business doesn't generate that level of income, I was asked to leave. You could have heard a pin drop. Derek told me, and I quote, "Come back when you're making real money like the rest of us." He said I was playing with crayons while real adults made serious money. Several people in the audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Derek was staring at his hands. Now, I found Derek's comments particularly interesting because at that very moment, Derek's real money lifestyle was being subsidized by my crayon-playing income. But Derek seemed to have forgotten about our financial arrangement entirely. I pulled out another document. In fact, when I called Derek this week to let him know I'd be discontinuing the loan payments, he had no idea I'd been making them. 5 years of monthly payments, and Derek had simply assumed they were being handled magically without any thought or gratitude. The managing partner's expression had shifted from warm interest to professional concern. So I realized Derek was absolutely right about one thing. If I don't make enough money to attend his birthday party, I certainly don't make enough money to continue subsidizing his lifestyle. Effective immediately, Derek will be taking over full responsibility for his student loan payments, which total approximately $3,200 per month. Derek's face had gone from white to green. I'm sharing this story not to embarrass Derek, but because I think it's important for young professionals to understand what real financial independence looks like. It's not about making a certain salary or looking down on people who earn less than you do. It's about taking responsibility for your own obligations and acknowledging the people who help you along the way. I looked directly at Derek for the first time since taking the podium. Derek, I'm proud of your professional accomplishments, but I'm disappointed in the person you've become. Success isn't just about your salary, it's about your character, and your character is revealed by how you treat the people who've sacrificed for your benefit. I closed my portfolio and smiled at the room. I hope Derek enjoys the full satisfaction of earning his success through his own efforts from now on. Thank you for listening, and congratulations again on Derek's promotion. The applause that followed was polite but uncertain. As I walked back to my seat, I could see Derek's colleagues looking at him with new understanding. The managing partner was writing something on his napkin. Derek himself looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. I stayed for another 30 minutes, making pleasant conversation with Derek's colleagues and accepting their awkward compliments about my honesty and generosity. Several people mentioned that they had no idea Derek had received so much family support, and they seemed genuinely troubled by his attitude toward my contributions. Derek didn't speak to me at all. He sat at his table accepting congratulations that now felt hollow and answering questions he clearly didn't want to answer. When I finally left the restaurant, Derek followed me outside. "Madison, what the hell was that?" he demanded. "That was the truth, Derek. I thought you'd appreciate having your success story told accurately. You humiliated me in front of my entire firm. I told the truth about our financial arrangement. If that humiliated you, maybe you should think about why the truth feels so embarrassing. You can't just cut off the loan payments. I can't afford $3,000 a month. Then I guess you'll have to make some changes. Maybe sell the BMW. Maybe move to a smaller place. Maybe learn to live within your actual means instead of the means I've been providing for you. This is insane. You're destroying my life over some stupid birthday party comment." I turned to face him fully. "Derek, this isn't about one comment. This is about 5 years of taking my financial support for granted while telling everyone you're self-made. This is about forgetting that your success was built on someone else's sacrifice. This is about becoming the kind of person who judges family members by their income and kicks them out of celebrations. I said I was sorry about the party." "No, Derek, you didn't. You said I was being dramatic. You said it was just fun. You never once actually apologized or acknowledged that what you did was wrong." Derek stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him calculating, trying to figure out what he could say to fix this situation. "Look, Madison, I know I've been thoughtless, but we can work this out. I'll pay you back, okay? We'll set up a payment plan, and I'll make it right." "With what money, Derek? You just told me you can't afford an extra $3,000 a month." "I'll figure it out. I'll get a second job. I'll cut expenses, whatever it takes." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "Derek, if you'd said this a week ago, if you'd acknowledged what I've done for you, if you'd shown some gratitude, if you'd treated me with basic respect, we might have been able to work something out. But instead, you decided I wasn't successful enough to exist in your world. I was wrong, okay? I was completely wrong. You're successful. You're important. You matter. I'm sorry." "I know I matter, Derek. I don't need you to tell me that. What I needed was for you to remember it before you decided to humiliate me in front of a room full of strangers." I started walking toward my car, but Derek grabbed my arm. "Madison, please. You're my sister. We're family. We can fix this." I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back up at his face. "Derek, you're the one who decided that family wasn't as important as income brackets. You're the one who chose to prioritize your image over our relationship. You made this choice." "But what about Christmas? What about family dinners? Are you just going to cut me off completely?" "I'm not cutting you off, Derek, but I'm also not going to pretend that nothing happened. You showed me exactly how you see me and exactly how much my contributions to your life mean to you. I'm just accepting that evaluation and adjusting our relationship accordingly." I got into my car and rolled down the window. "Good luck with those loan payments, Derek. I'm sure someone as successful and self-made as you will figure it out just fine." As I drove away, I could see Derek in my rearview mirror, standing alone in the parking lot, finally facing the reality of what his success actually cost, and what it was about to cost him going forward. For the first time in years, I felt completely free.